In this video, I'm going to be talking about 10 most common mistakes that I see fishermen make. I'm very fortunate in that I get to fish with a lot of different people. A lot of those people are new to fishing, and these 10 mistakes are mistakes that I see a lot of newcomers to the sport of fishing make. So let's get started. Rightio, mistake number one is not using a loop knot. When you're fishing with a little minnow lure, something really small like this, it's absolutely critical that you use a loop knot. You can use a small swivel or snap swivel of some kind. The more symmetrical that swivel is, the better. You see, with larger lures like this and bigger, they displace quite a lot of water. And if you just use like a blood knot or a normal hitch, they'll often pull that straight and they'll swim well. But little minnows like this, because they don't displace a lot of water because they're so small, if your lure is off center, the whole lure will swim sideways and you'll have no end of problems. And you can correct a lot of those problems by using a loop knot. If you don't know how to tie your loop knot, there are plenty of videos on YouTube to teach you how to tie a loop knot. I've actually got one on my channel myself called How to Tie a Loop Knot. I suggest if you want to go fishing with minnows that you learn how to tie a loop knot so that your minnow will track properly. Now, as I said, snap swivels and line clips will work, but the more symmetrical they are, the better, because it's all about balance. When you're using a lure that doesn't pull much, it's hard to pull everything straight and track properly. The best way to overcome it is with a loop knot. That's mistake number one. Mistake number two that I've seen made quite a few times is people spooling up their reel, whether it's a bait caster reel or a spinning reel, and not with braided fishing line and not putting monofilament line underneath. It is very, very important that you put a little bit of monofilament line underneath so that the braid will grip the spool. Braided line won't grip the spool like monofilament line will. It's amazing how many times I've had people come to me with their reel and say, "Hey Robbie, what do you reckon's wrong with this? The line keeps turning, or the reel's not working, it's turning but nothing's happening." That's because you haven't put monofilament line or nylon line under your braided line, and the braided line is not gripping the spool. So unless you've got a fluted spool that you can actually poke the line through and tie a knot so that it has to grip, unless you can do that, if you are tying directly to the spool, you need to use monofilament line or nylon line underneath your braided line as backing, mostly so that it will grip the spool and prevent the spool from spinning inside the line. Number three. Now this is something that I see a lot of bait fishermen do in rivers that is a bit of a mistake. A lot of people who are new to fishing have got this idea or this belief or this mentality that when you walk down to the bank, you have to cast all the way across the river to the other side to find the good fishing. Now, quite often that's what you need to do. That's appropriate. You might be on a sandbar or just a real flat edge and you need to cast across into the deep water. But all too often I see people walk down to the bank, a nice steep drop off with a few logs in front of them, perfect bait fishing water. Then they cast straight over that beautiful water to the sandbar on the other side or the shallow water on the other side. That is a big mistake. If you are bait fishing from the bank, if you've got nice water in front of you, usually that's as good a spot as any to fish, if not better. Now I know this depends a lot from species to species, as some species spook a lot easier than other species, but particularly in my area with Murray cod fishing, if you have got nice deep water with logs at your feet up against the bank, that's where you need to put your line. There's no point casting over into the shallow water. So when you walk down and go bait fishing, before you cast, just think to yourself, where's the best water? Am I going to cast over the good water to get to the other side, or am I better off just casting right in front of me? And I tell you honestly, quite often I catch fish no more than a metre from the bank right in front of where I'm sitting. The key is to sit there really, really quietly and just watch your rods. Tip number four is more to do with lure fishing for Murray cod and for trout in this area and probably other species elsewhere. That is walking past the good spots. Most of you that have fished trout streams will know that the holes, the nice deep pools, are the hot spots to catch the fish. But in between those pools, quite often there's really nice rapids and riffles and backwaters where grasshoppers can land in and they will hold fish. And yet so many people will just hole hop. They'll hop from one hole to the next hole to the next hole and walk past all that good water. I see it with Murray cod fishing too. Fish the nice deep holes with the logs, then walk past the shallow water up to the next deep hole and not even cast into the good spots. So often I've had to say to people, how come you didn't cast here? Or why didn't you cast here? I might say, hey mate, did you ever go up this loggy? And they'll say, no, mate, I walked past it. You're walking past good water. That what appears to be crappy water in between the holes can be some of the most productive water you'll find. So walking past good looking water walking past average looking water, to get to good looking water is quite often a way to make sure you don't catch as many fish. Don't overlook the dodgy spots in between folks, because quite often they'll hold just as many fish as the good deep holes. Number 5. This is something I see mostly with trout fishing, and that is racing, competing against your mates. You need to be disciplined and come up with a system where you can take it in turns, fish every hole and fish them all thoroughly. So often I see it, and when I was younger I used to do it with my mates, and my uncle when he was alive was a shocker. We would cover so much water so quickly because you'd have a couple of casts. Next thing you know, he'd be up at the next hole ready to cast. So I felt obliged or compelled to leapfrog him and go up to the next hole. It was almost like it was a competition. But that doesn't help you catch more fish. I'll give you the tip. In fact, you usually catch less because you're not fishing thorough enough. You're competing with each other. You're not doing it properly. You might have a bit of fun and a bit of banter, but you usually won't catch as many fish. The best thing I can suggest, and I do this with my good mate Sandy, the camo man, develop a system where you take it in turns. You go first this hole, your mate can have the next hole, you can have the next hole. You know, you might, what me and Sandy do, he'll fish this hole, then it's my turn to go in front, then he'll get behind me, then I'll fish all the dodgy water between the holes leading up to the next hole, then I'll get the first dibs in the next hole. If I get snagged, well, he comes over and fishes it, and then it's his turn anyway. We've got a system, and I suggest to you all, if you're trout fishing in particular, although this can be applied to Murray cod fishing, but it's more specific to trout, because once you walk past a bit of water, the trout get spooked and take off. So if you're fishing, particularly trout fishing, don't push in on your mates. Develop a system that enables you both to fish equally and catch as many fish as each other, and that will help you catch more fish. Number 6 is sort of related to number 5, and that is fishing too fast. Whether you're with a mate or on your own, so many people go cast, walk up, and they'll cover way too much water. Slow it down, make a few more casts, cover a bit more area, fish the unlikely spots which I mentioned earlier. Just cover as much water as you can. You might have a nice stream with a trout sitting here, facing that way, and you might cast down the middle and he hasn't seen it. Then you walk past, next thing you know, you see a trout take off upstream or downstream because you've spooked him. So you want to have a good few casts and really take your time and not walk too fast. And this is particularly important with Murray cod fishing, especially if you're kayaking. A lot of people drifting will just drift through a hole, have 2 or 3 casts, and then they're at the other side and they're on their way. The slower you can go and the more you can concentrate your casts, the more fish you're going to catch. In saying this, it's important to note that when you're trout fishing, you don't want to go too slow either. A few casts into a pool, no fish come out, and might be time to move up, because usually you'll get a sense pretty quickly if there's a trout on the go. So you don't want to move too fast, but you don't want to go too slow either. You need to find what you might consider a decent speed or a healthy speed, and I can tell you with Murray cod fishing, that speed will usually be much, much, much slower than what it will be with trout fishing. So particularly with cod fishing, slow down, concentrate your cast to every snag, because you never know where the fish is going to be sitting, and quite often they're not even near the snags. They'll be hard up against a bank where there's no snags, so make sure you cast the plain looking banks as well. Don't go too fast. Mistake number 8, this is mostly relating to Murray cod fishing, is that they don't cast close enough to the snags. Whether it's because they're new and their casting ability isn't great and they're not landing close enough to snags, or quite often people are too scared to get snagged because they don't want to lose their lure, or even when they're bait fishing they don't want to have to retie a hook and sinker. But the fish are in the snags. Murray cod in particular, we nickname them river-dwelling log hogs, because they hog the logs. They live inside the hollow logs. They live under the gaps and the washouts under the logs. They don't sit out in the open. So by casting your bait out in the open, you're nowhere near the fish. by casting a lure, a metre from the snags so that you don't get snagged, that might not entice the fish to come out and hit the lure. By running the lure directly along the side of the snag, the fish might just have to turn its head and go bang, and you'll increase your hookup rate. Don't be scared of getting snagged. Getting snagged is a part of fishing. Yes, I know I get sponsored and I get sent lures all the time, so it's not so bad for me, but that wasn't always the case. I've paid for thousands of dollars worth of lures myself over the years, and I still buy a few now myself. And I still refuse to let snags hold me back. So you have to get close to the snags, regardless whether you're bait fishing or lure fishing for Murray cod. With trout, it's a little bit different because they'll sit out in the open, and so will redfin. Yellow belly like snags as well, but they will move out in the open a bit more freely than what Murray cod will. That's a big mistake a lot of people make, trying to avoid snags. You'll avoid the snags, but you'll probably avoid the fish too. Number 9. Oh, I've seen this happen so often. I've been guilty of this myself years ago. Netting fish from behind. My dad used to say to me growing up, you should never, ever, ever chase the fish with the landing net. If you can't get your line and lead that fish into the net head first, then the fish isn't tired enough and you need to just tire him out a little bit more. Every single time you try and net that fish from behind, the moment the net touches that fish's tail, you go, you'll take off, and quite often he'll snap the line, he'll get off the hook, and if you're really unlucky, he will dig the hook into the net, and you'll have the fish on one side, the net on the other, and the fish will get off because you snagged your own landing net. I done that to one of my best mates, Sandy Hector, the camo man, with a Murray cod of around 10 or 12 pounds down at Lake Mulwala a few years ago. So folks, never, ever, ever net a fish from behind. If you're going to net a fish, just sort of slowly manoeuvre the fish into the net head first, or otherwise you are asking for trouble. Actually, I think Brian Smith might have a video on his YouTube channel where he's got a massive big cod and he tries to, and his reel breaks and he's in a hell of a mess, so he tries to chase the fish and net it from behind. Granted, Brian didn't have much choice because his reel had just broken and the fish was likely to get off anyway, so he was doing whatever he could to ensure he caught the fish. But it didn't work because netting from behind has a very high mortality rate, I can tell you. Number 10, that is to research the rules. You guys would not believe how often I get photos and stories of illegal things, and I know for a fact that people are completely innocent. And one guy said to me a while back, "Hey Robbie, look at the silver perch we caught," and it was dead. It was in an area where you're not allowed to keep silver perch to start with, and it was dead. But guess what? It wasn't even a silver perch, it was a Macquarie perch, dead on an esky, gutted. I've had kids send me photos of undersized fish. I actually ran into a guy the other day at Coles in Wangaratta, and he said, "Are you catching any crays?" And I said, "No mate, the cray season's closed until June. You're only allowed to go crayfishing June, July and August." And he said, "That's funny, I was camping down the river last week and there was a bloke crayfishing." People you've got to read the rules. And also, people ask YouTubers like myself the rules. What happens if we get it wrong? If you ask me, what's the law regarding this, that or the other, and I give you an answer and I've got it wrong and you get caught, guess what? You can't say, "Oh, that's what Robbie said," because the onus is on you to know the rules. That's why I'm reluctant to talk about the rules a lot, because if I could get it wrong and get you into trouble, and because they change frequently. It's very, very important that you know the rules. I had somebody last year send me a photo of a 90-centimetre cod. It was gutted on his kitchen bench. I said, "It's oversized." He said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Isn't it 60 centimetres? I said, "No, a slot limit of 55 to 75 came in about 2 or 3 years ago, probably longer." He had no idea. He thought it was a big fish, it was good to keep, and he kept an oversized fish. You guys would be amazed how often people send me photos of fish they've caught out of season, or oversized, undersized, protected species, and they're all absolutely innocent. They haven't done it with the wrong intentions at all, but they've made the mistake. Now, if the fisheries guys see you, once you've made that mistake, you're gone. And some of the fines are way, way, way up into the thousands of dollars. And a common one is people not being able to tell the difference between a Murray cod and a trout cod. If you get caught with a trout cod, unless you've caught it at Lake Samble or Lake Kerford in Beechworth, you're screwed. You are going to be facing huge fines. Because apart from those two waterways, they are totally protected everywhere else. So you need to understand the rules. And also every year we see people caught fishing downstream of Lake Mulwala. That section is closed in the springtime. You're not allowed to fish there at all, regardless whether you're practicing catch and release. You're not allowed to fish that section But people don't even know. They don't bother reading the rules. They go down there, they throw a line in, next thing you know, they're busted and they've got big fines. So folks, rule number 10 is know the rules. Research the rules. Don't ask people the rules. Go online. We live in a digital era. We've got Google. We can access everything we need online. Go online and read the rules for yourself. That way, the onus is on you if you get caught. Folks, there's 10 mistakes that I see people make. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two from this video, and hopefully you don't make those mistakes, and hopefully you can catch more fish as a result of watching this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you have, why not give it a big fat thumbs up, leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video.